So you join me back at my Discovery 4, and today is a job that I've been meaning to do for quite some time, and that's to replace one of these, which you may or may not know what it is. This is the lower steering arm. This is a genuine item. It cost me £250. There are cheaper ones out there that are about £50 or £60. I wouldn't recommend you buy one of those. This is a job you probably only want to do once. And it should be a fairly simple job. There's literally one bolt at each end. And to get at it, we've got to get inside the car here. Now, there's a few ways that I've read about on forums that you can get to this job. The Land Rover Discovery manual, the workshop manual, is delightfully unhelpful about it. And nobody, as far as I can tell on the internet, has ever said how to do this on a late model vehicle, Discovery 4 or LR4, with the stop-start system, because lots of people seem to access it via the engine bay, and I'll show you that in a sec. But there's just no way I want to take apart all the stop-start gubbins that's in there. It's a bit too complex for me, I think. So we're going to follow what Land Rover say today and try and go via the wheel arch. And we're going to see just how easy that is. It looks pretty tricky to me, so who knows, we may end up going through the engine bay. But let's go and have a look, and I'll show you, or I'll try and show you whereabouts it is. So when we look under the bonnet of the Discovery here, this is a stop-start model, as I mentioned. You can see that we've got a whole load of stuff here. We've got the auxiliary battery, something to do with it there. All these power cables are going across and round to the other side of the engine bay to the main battery. And there's a lot of stuff here. Now, I know some people, they actually remove all of these side parts of this auxiliary box, which is fine if there's nothing else here, and then they can get access to the steering arm, which is down there. Now, I'll try and point out with my fingers. There's absolutely no way I'm going to get the camera to focus, but there's a slim gap down there. Ow, that's hot. Which you could get an extension socket right down there to the 10mm nut. Now, I've measured it, and from there down to that nut is 40 centimeters, 400mm. So you need a long or a number of extension bars. Now, I can see it with the naked eye, but there's just no way the camera's going to focus all the way down there. So without being able to get at it from this way, I'm going to have to go through this way. Now, Land Rover say to remove that heat shield there with the 3 nuts. And you can just about see the silver, see it there where my finger is, the silver of the wrapper around the steering arm. So it comes down at an angle down here and then connects down there with the back of the steering rack. So I'm going to remove the wheel to give me access. I always prefer doing that. I'm going to put it on axle stands. It'll give you a better view as well. So let's crack on with that. So let me try and show you whereabouts this is. This is quite tricky to get at and to get a light in there, but hopefully you can see it just there. Look, end of it, you can just see the clasp where the light's shining. Now, really difficult to get an iPhone to look at that. There. And the Torx bolt is on the other side of it, which means it's going to be difficult to get at. There it is, you can just see it lit up, just slightly out of focus. Apologies for that. I do not have high quality cameras. Ah, that looks a bit better. You can see it right now. So the Torx head is on the other side. I've got to somehow get at that with a very small socket set and my slim hands. I wonder how much blood I'm going to lose in this one. Aha! And there is the steering arm. Now, the question is, can we get a hand up there to get anywhere near the top bolt? Oh, I can just feel it. It is just there, the end of my finger. Just not sure how likely it is I can get to that with a spanner. Land Rover don't give you any instructions on this at all, I should point out. They just say remove it, which is all well and good. I've got a funny feeling I'm going to have to go in via the top, because how on earth do you get to it? And no, it's just not going to work. Now my hand's stuck, literally. Ow! That is borderline impossible. Right, so having failed to get at it through there, I've managed to get a long socket all the way down. I'm sure the camera won't be able to pick it up all the way down in the depths. Try. It's down there somewhere. But I've got a purchase on it, so I'm going to try and see if I can remove it. Lord knows how this will go. Well, bingo. I got the old one out using a trusty magnet stick. It's very stiff. Got WD-40 on it, and there's not much plane of movement for this little socket, and this is the smallest one I've got. Oh wow, really tight in there. I'm guessing the thread lock's working very well. Difficult to get a view of this while I'm doing it, so I'm going to just crack on and show you the end result. Right, so I battled with that somewhat. The lower steering joint is very tricky to get at, and there's not much clearance. I have now removed this little splash cover in the bottom corner here. Now I was hoping when I got this off that this would be completely seized up in one direction, but it's not. It's actually moving quite freely. Now it does feel like there's a little bit of play in this, but to be honest, there's not a huge amount of difference between the two. So I was hoping for a phenomenal difference in the lumpy steering that I'm getting, but I don't know whether this is going to cure it. It does look a bit like there is excess grease around the joint. Now I've been oiling it with WD-40 but not with grease, so maybe they are, you know, the UJ there, the pins inside are on their way out. Feels a little bit grainy, not much. So now I've got to try and get the new one in, and if it's half as difficult as getting that one out, I'm not looking forward to it. Let's crack on. So I took out this splash panel, it's dead easy, 4 plastic clips, and managed to access, I just need to crawl on the floor, hang on. Managed to access the rack. From here you can see there's the top of it, and in order to get that off I had to basically hammer it off with a crowbar and a mallet, and then it sort of fell down inside that gap. So now I've got to feed one back up in there somehow. This is going to be fun. So I've got to figure out a way to stop this 10mm bolt for the top end of it from falling out of the socket as I lower it into the engine bay. So I've just used a bit of tape. I'll show you where we're up to. Hopefully you can see in there the new bolt, and I've just been doing it by finger. There is like a tubular recess in that steering shaft, so it can only go in the right position. You can see that the shaft goes just up to the top of that clamp. So I've tightened it up. You can see the pink stuff, that's the thread lock. This has been challenging for access, and I've just lost my 10mm socket somewhere in the engine bay. Really annoyed. I've not done up the top bolt fully yet because I needed to make sure that I could reposition this in the right place. I'm at the point where I can't tighten that anymore with my fingers, so it's time to get the E10 socket on it, and I just hope I don't lose that, because I dropped it once and it fell underneath in this engine tray and I had to pick it up with my magnet tool. So let's see how we get on. There is very little room get the ratchet on and then to swing it as it's getting a bit tighter and gripping on that thread lock, it's getting a bit easier. So you can just see I'm doing maybe an eighth of a turn each time. I'll keep doing this, come back to you. Right, that's the bottom E10 bolt done up. The workshop manual says 30 Newton meters of torque. I can't get a torque wrench in there, it's just too big. So I've just gone for bloody tight as it's a steering component. Right, so the job is done. It's all back together. It was annoying that I lost my 10mm socket on the end of a very slim 1/4 inch extension bar. That's the best way to get at it from the top. So key learnings is you do need to remove that little heat shield there. You can get your hand in then. It helps you maneuver it from both ends when you're putting it into the car. You can absolutely access it from the top without having to dismantle anything in the engine bay. It just helps if you've got a selection of extension bars and a couple of 10mm sockets. This, you can see, is pretty cruddy, and I'm going to take it on a test drive in the next hour or so and just see if there's any improvement, and hopefully it'll just feel a little bit tighter, and we'll see. It was impossible to know whether I was doing up the nuts to 30 Newton meters, so I just guessed. Just went with super tight, hoping that that's the best thing to do. Well, it's a day later. I'm getting Oscar ready for a show tomorrow. I'm hoping that the weather's going to be nicer than it is today. We had sunshine yesterday and it feels cold again today, hence I've got all my layers on again. I just wanted to summarize really the video from yesterday, the work that I did. What I didn't find when I was looking on YouTube for words of encouragement and how people had done it before, there's very little actual information out there. There was one chap that said he'd done it but didn't really show much, and the camera work was a bit shaky, so I thought I could improve on this and help people. You absolutely can do this at home. It is absolutely possible to do this even with the most basic of tools, and I'll list the things that you need, and it's not many. You just need to be able to jack up your car safely and have a socket set effectively, and I would definitely recommend you do this if you've got lumpy steering, if it's a bit notchy, if it doesn't self-center very well. It's more than likely that that bottom universal joint on the lower steering arm is on its way out. Now, I've heard some people mention that theirs, when they removed it, was literally seized in one plane. Now, mine wasn't anywhere near as bad as that, but there was grease coming out of it, so they were clearly on the way out. And I had done a short-term remedy by spraying it with WD-40 on a regular basis, which worked, does loosen it up, but it is temporary, and that washes off quite quickly. I tried a Teflon spray, that didn't last very long either. So I'm really glad I did it, because the driving that I've done in it so far, the steering's much lighter, there's none of that lumpiness that I had before. It does self-center really quickly, and it's just a nicer car to drive. It was a very heavy steering car, and I didn't know whether that was a factor of the D4, the LR4. So before this I had a Range Rover, and before that I had a D5, and they're very light steering. And I don't remember my Discovery 3 having heavy steering, but this was particularly heavy, I thought. So now it is much, much nicer. So I'm really pleased that I did the work, and I'm pleased that I bought a genuine item steering arm as well, just because do it once, do it right. If you have any questions about how I did it, let me know. Hope you've enjoyed it, hope it's been informative, and I hope it sparks you on to want to do it yourself. See you next time.